Week before your menstruation, you are going nuts and crazy. You don't feel like yourself at all. Most of the times that is a disbalance in your hormones instead of it's just my hormones and I have to deal with it.
I'm Jo Sarah, and welcome to the UMAVERSITY podcast, empowering you with real talk, real education, and real stories from our experts and our tribe of women who've got your back.
Yes.
Our mission? Educating 1 billion women worldwide on their mental, body, and sexual wellness journey.
Yeah.
So join me, learn something new as we build our badass tribe. Welcome to another episode of the UMAVERSITY podcast, and today we're talking all about biohacking your hormones as a woman. And our guest today is Dominique de Ruijter. She's an osteopath and an orthomolecular therapist specializing in women's health. She really is passionate about providing women with the best tips to biohack their health so that they can live the best life and really hone into their well-being. Welcome, Dominique.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited too.
Yeah.
At the last UMAVERSITY event, you gave an expert talk about hormones, and the responses to your expert talk were incredible. So I'm really excited about today because we needed to have you on the podcast as well. So
I'm so honored to be here, and I really love talking about the subject. So I can't wait to dive in.
For sure, yeah. So let us start with talking about a big taboo. A lot of women don't know what happens to their hormones in every phase of their life. You have before pregnancy, of course, you have teens first, then you have before pregnancy, during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and you have before and after menopause. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what happens. That is wild, huh?
Yeah, it is wild.
Nobody teaches us these things.
No, but it's also like pretty complex. So maybe you ever had like advice about diet or something, and then you went to the supermarket and you were like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. We can see a little bit of the same with hormones. It's really a process of getting to know your hormones, and not everyone is like reading all the research, etc. Not everyone is within the field. So I think it's also up to me and other therapists and other people who are navigating these subjects to really teach women about their hormones, but to do it in a way that's simple and that's not that difficult or that complex to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is the reason why we have this podcast and why I also created UMAVERSITY, because if we don't know about it, we should educate ourselves. And with that knowledge, we can come really far. And because we don't know about what happens to our bodies and our hormones, we have unaddressed symptoms, we have confusion, frustration, and a lot of shame when we're thinking, oh my God, I'm so out of control. But actually, it all comes down to our hormones. Yeah. Let's talk about it today.
Yeah, and let's maybe look also at what is normal, what isn't normal. We talked about it during the event you hosted, because nowadays you see a lot of happening on social media about hormones, but you also see like a little bit of two extremes. First, we don't talk about hormones at all, and second, we talk a lot about hormones, but we shame our hormones and we say, oh, it's all due to our hormones, we can't do anything about it. But in fact, when we are human beings, we have hormones, but that doesn't mean we should be like out of control when the hormones are imbalanced. Because if we really feel out of control, most of the times it's more like a disbalance that is causing it. When you have like the week before your menstruation, you are going nuts and crazy and you just don't feel like yourself at all. Most of the times that is a disbalance in your hormones instead of it's just my hormones and I have to deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So today we're talking about the tools that we can use to balance our hormones, to biohack our hormones. Yeah. I love that, because 1 in 3 women don't feel informed about their hormones. And more than 50% doesn't even know about their menopausal phase that's happening. And every woman will go through menopause. Yeah. So it's so important to talk about.
Yeah. And you are saying 50%, and
it's more than 50%.
I think it's even more than 50%. Yeah. And it is quite a journey, and it's quite something to go through menopause, because it's a really big question about how can we navigate through these stages, or how can we optimize our hormones? Where shall we start?
The first question I have for you: what are the top hormones, the most important hormones that every woman should know about?
Yeah, In order to answer that question, we really need to know a little bit more about the function of hormones. So hormones are like little messengers that are produced by certain glands, like the thyroid, like the pancreas, like the pituitary, and they are sent to different tissues within the body. And depending on what tissue it is, depending on what hormone it is, it actually tells the tissue, do this or do that. So hormones are not just focused on fertility. They are not just focused on the menstrual cycle. They are like ruling the entire body. So that's really important to know. Then second, it's really important to see that there is like a hormonal hierarchy. So I can talk so much about like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and all the effects, and we will talk about it, I hope, today. Far more important is how different hormones can have an impact on these steroid hormones, on these sex hormones. So, for example, if you have like a lot of stress, now stress results in a production of cortisol and prolactin. And these hormones are so high up in the hierarchy that they can inhibit the production of these sex hormones as a result of chronic stress, or even if it might be physical, it might be mental, it might be emotional. When cortisol is chronically high, we see that estrogen and progesterone, especially progesterone, are inhibited. And then we see all these hormonal disbalances or imbalances or maybe fertility related issues. Knowing that some hormones, they are dominant in comparison to these sex hormones, we can like play with this. So if we know that cortisol inhibits certain sex hormones when it's like produced too long and too chronically, then we know that we might want to work with stress, because stress is like a really big thing, especially in the world of today. It's like a really big thing. Insulin, for example, is also a hormone. And when you eat like a lot of refined sugars, you eat like 6, 7, 8 times a day, then insulin is getting ramped up within the body. And insulin also has like an inhibiting effect on estrogen. So what insulin does is that it like inhibits the conversion from androgens to estrogen. And this is what we see with PCOS, for example. We see an increase of androgens and we see a decrease in estrogen. And that's how insulin, for example, can also cause like hormonal imbalances. This is by itself so important to know, because when we don't target like these dominant hormones, then talking about estrogen and progesterone and testosterone on itself might not be the most important discussion we should have. Maybe that's a different answer to your question, but I'm really delighted to tell you more, of course, about the sex hormones, because they are really important for the menstrual cycle. But I just really want to emphasize that it's really important to see them as a whole and as an integral cascade.
Yeah, so that's really good to discuss, actually, because cortisol is a big, I have PCOS myself, and I know that my cortisol levels are very high, and I feel stressed a lot. Mm-hmm. And because of this, also I have a lot of insulin resistance, and so sugar cravings are definitely
all
present.
over the place. Yeah.
For someone that doesn't know about hormones at all, like what are let's say the top 5 hormones that we have to deal with as a woman every day?
Every day, okay.
In every single phase of our life.
Yeah.
You already said estrogen, progesterone,
mm-hmm.
testosterone,
mm-hmm.
cortisol, and then maybe androgen is actually testosterone.
Yeah, testosterone is like a member of the family of androgens. Yeah. We've got cortisol, and cortisol is a stress hormone, really, really important. We shouldn't be like angry or upset with cortisol, because cortisol is like our best friend, but it just should be in balance. It shouldn't be out of whack.
In moderation.
It should be in moderation, yeah. So it's not like the thing itself that it's so toxic. It's the dose of the thing we put in. So, for example, estrogen isn't dangerous, but too much estrogen dominance can be dangerous for the body. So we really have to look at the normal doses of these hormones. So cortisol, the stress hormone, when we are chronically stressed, you just told us a little bit, but when we are chronically stressed, you see that there is a higher risk at insulin resistance. So it's not just the sugars, it's not just diet, but it also can be stress. It also can be a lack of sleep that causes insulin resistance. And we know by effect that insulin resistance in most of the times is related to something like PCOS. Top 5 of hormones you might want to know. I have a beautiful hormone that is not estrogen or progesterone or testosterone, but this is oxytocin. And oxytocin, I talked about it during the event. Oxytocin is just a beautiful hormone because it's one of the few hormones that is capable to inhibit cortisol. So if you're like really stressed up, you have like high levels of cortisol, then oxytocin can be your savior. And oxytocin is released when you are in oohing activities. So when you have physical contact with someone, when you are making love, when you are birthing a child, when you breastfeed, when you are hugging your favorite pet, when you listen to beautiful music, when you are standing under the hot shower within winter, not within summer, because then I don't think you like it that much. But all these activities have like a oozing effect on you. And this oozing effect diminishes the effect of cortisol. And when cortisol is like a little bit more relaxed, it's a little bit more within the natural dose, then we see a beautiful rebalancing of the steroid hormones or the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So we've got oxytocin, we've got cortisol, stress hormone. We've got insulin. So when you are really stressed, when you are really inflamed, when you have like less sleep than you should be having, when you are eating a lot of refined sugars or carbohydrates, then insulin can be like really problematic because insulin has an effect on the brain as well as the ovaries, creating like disbalances between estrogen, progesterone, and the androgens. With insulin, it is the same. We don't have to be angry at insulin, but it just have to be there in moderacy. I don't know moderation. Yeah. Perfect, thank you. And then we've got the steroid hormones, the sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. I think for the female body, estrogen and progesterone are like really interesting to know because depending on where you are in your cycle, sometimes progesterone can be like the main character and sometimes estrogen can be the main character. Depending on these hormones, you can guide yourself into different like activities or nutrition or sleep or whatever. So if we just look at estrogen is like a little bit the main female hormone. I think a lot of people do know about estrogen. And we know about estrogen because we know that it plays a crucial role in the development of female sexual characteristics. It also plays an important role in the development of the ovarian follicle. So the ovarian follicle is like the little sac where the egg is in, and when it can develop, there can be an ovulation. So estrogen is really important in that first phase of the cycle. But estrogen is more than just a sex hormone. It has an effect on our skin. It has an effect on the lubrication of our body. So our eyes, our mouth, our vagina, our uterine lining. It maintains good bone density. It is really neuroprotective and also protects from cardiovascular disease, for example. And beautiful estrogen is also really protective against insulin. So it's really interesting for women who go to menopause. They are actually way more at risk for insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can lead to different problems, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. So when we can lower the risk of insulin resistance, we are striving more towards health. Estrogen is really important, and estrogen is like the main character within the first part of your cycle. So in order to help estrogen thrive within the first part of the cycle, we should be limiting our refined sugar intake and our refined carbohydrate intake, because they can have like a sort of competition. And we actually just want to like decrease it a little. We want to eat like lots of probiotics, like lots of fiber, lots of green vegetables, protein, fats, but a little bit less of the carbohydrates, just in order to like bump up the estrogen. when we go to the second phase of our cycle, so after ovulation, after estrogen has done its work.
So the first phase is ovulation, you say?
Now, so when we talk about the menstrual cycle, you can divide your cycle in 4 phases or in 3 phases, whatever you like. So some people like it more when we divide it in 4 phases, because then you have menstruation is winter, then you have your follicular phase, so the period between your menstruation to ovulation is spring. Then you have ovulation is summer, and then you have the luteal phase, so the phase from ovulation to the day before you have your first day of bleeding, and that is autumn. Because it's really, we know what we have to do in the winter, we know what we have to do in the summer. We know that in the summer we are way more energetic. We know that in the winter we are way more like within ourselves. We are more in introspection of ourselves. So for a lot of people, it's really a good way to know a little bit what you can do during each phase of this menstrual cycle. But if we check it more from like a science perspective, then we do it sometimes in 4, sometimes in 3 phases. So we've got the follicular phase, and the follicular phase is the first day you bleed, or you can also say, like, the follicular phase, you can also divide into like stages. You have the menstruation phase, that is just day 1 till the last day of your menstruation. Then you have the follicular phase, is the day after your menstruation until ovulation. Then you've got the ovulatory phase, the day that you ovulate. And then you've got a big lap, like 14 days for the most of women. And that's called the luteal phase. So it's a way more long than all these 3 phases together. Especially within the follicular phase, but even also in the menstruation phase, we see a rise in estrogen. When you have your menstruation on day 3, for somewhat, day 3, day 4, you can already feel like energy's coming up a little bit. And this is also the day when production of estrogen is increasing. And this increase happens until you ovulate. So on ovulation day, estrogen is on its highest. It's on its peak.
That's when you feel like on top of the world.
On top of the world.
Yeah.
For most women, not for all, but for most women. And especially when we talk about the 5th hormone, testosterone, during that ovulation period, we see like testosterone is coming up, and testosterone is like, bam, it's like boosting the estrogen further. And testosterone helps us to speak more clearly and to be more assertive. And testosterone helps us with being confident about ourselves. It helps us being more present and being just in the world. But testosterone also helps with recovery. It helps with motivation. It helps with muscle growth and muscle recovery. So, and it also helps with losing fat, for example. So when you have already high levels of estrogen, and then testosterone is coming up and is increasing in the day you ovulate or a day before, a lot of women do feel on top of the world. And then after your ovulation, in the first week after ovulation, most of the women do feel quite good. It's quite okay. If you are experienced like really heavy PMS or PMDD or like other hormonal problems, it's possible that you can't relate to this at all. But for the normal cyclical female who doesn't really have any complaints, you see that the first week after ovulation is quite okay, because then you see that progesterone and estrogen are both quite high still. And it's even at like the mid-luteal phase, so between the spot between like a week after your ovulation and a week before your menstruation, progesterone is on its peak. So that's when most of the women feel like they're quite okay with life. They're like relaxed. And maybe it's interesting to now talk about the effect of progesterone. Progesterone, for example, is really important for its anti-inflammatory effects. When we see that actually every disease is caused by inflammation, it's really nice to have a hormone that is anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
Progesterone also helps like build and grow the uterine lining and like prepping the body for a quality pregnancy. Progesterone is pro-gestation, and gestation means pregnancy. So it's a really pregnancy hormone. So we really need progesterone, but progesterone is also really important for the relaxing of the smooth muscle. It can help with cramping. It can help with water retention because progesterone regulates water fluids within the body. So when women are like 10 days before menstruation, they are already really bloated. Might be like there is not enough progesterone because progesterone on itself regulates water retention.
No way.
Yeah, it's really crazy because we are blaming progesterone for all these PMS symptoms, but actually most of the times, I'm not saying that it's all of the times, but most of the times it's actually that it's not enough progesterone, and that's why we are having PMS symptoms.
And also, like, for instance, PMDD and PMS.
Yeah.
So you're saying not all of the time, but most of the time, PMS and PMDD are caused by not enough progesterone.
PMS and progesterone are really related. But with PMDD, it's different because PMDD doesn't really necessarily have to be caused by a lack of progesterone, but some women can like really extremely react to progesterone. And it's not the only thing because PMDD is still really research. We don't really know so much about it. But PMDD can be caused by extreme reactions to progesterone. But we see that also the immune system is involved with PMDD, and it's more like a problem with the psyche. With it's not that it's within the brain, but we see with PMDD that the insomnia and the irritability and the anger and the anxiety is way more higher than, for example, with PMS. But we are still like researching the field of PMDD. But I just wanted to tell something more about progesterone because progesterone also has an intimate connection with the neurotransmitter GABA. And GABA, you can see it like a little hormone in the brain. It is resulting in a more chill, a more relaxed, a more sleepy feeling. So, for example, when there is a lack of progesterone and GABA is not being produced or is not being connected to progesterone, we can also see a lot of PMS symptoms. So we need progesterone in order to have less PMS symptoms. So because of the relationship between progesterone and GABA, it's really, really important to have enough progesterone in order to activate GABA in order to have less PMS symptoms. Because PMS symptoms are mostly also associated with a decrease or a lack of GABA activity. And I also just want to touch upon something about estrogen because estrogen talks with the neurotransmitter serotonin and with dopamine and adrenaline. That's why estrogen can make you feel like more uplifted, like more, I'm excited for this world, I'm motivated. And progesterone has more like a sleepy, chill effect. Like, I'm just gonna like integrate. I'm just gonna like lay it here for a moment and I'll take it back up when I'm within the follicular phase, when estrogen is becoming higher. So I hope that I now
I learned so much. Oh my God. I've heard you speak so many times, but every time you speak about all your knowledge that you know about hormones and biohacking of women, I just learned so much. And I'm not the only woman that learns. So thank you for explaining that. And it's wild. We don't learn this.
No.
I mean, it sounds complicated, but actually, if you explain it, you can see, okay, we have all these messengers and it's really important that they are not too in the front stage, but that they're all just doing a dance together instead of someone being in the backstage, but all just dancing. So it's important that our hormones interact with each other in moderation. So what is biohacking exactly?
Biohacking is like the art and the science of changing your biology, changing the physiology within your body in order to feel like the best version you can ever be. So biohacking includes like everything. And that's why I fell in love with biohacking, because within the work I do, it's a lot about talking about disease and problems and symptoms and the lack of health. And within biohacking, biohackers are like obsessed with not just health, but feeling like the absolute best of themselves, so they can become the best version of themselves. a lot of people think that biohacking has to be like really expensive and that you have to use all these technologies, etc. But biohacking by itself is, you really have to catch the low-hanging fruit. You really want to integrate the things that have the highest effect on your body, and then when you can like optimize with tools or with tech, and then you're even a level further. You can just like focusing on the details.
And what got you into biohacking?
It's so funny because the last couple of years were like a roller coaster, because I had such a vision of what I wanted to do, and I just couldn't really touch it or something. It was really like frustrating. Before I had like that really roller coaster feeling, I think I was maybe 19 or something, maybe even earlier, I don't know. But then I was listening to a podcast of Dave Asprey, and he is also called like the father of biohacking. And I just was so obsessed by everything he had to tell about biohacking and about optimization of health and all these systems. So he was talking about cryotherapy, he was talking about ice baths, he was talking about stem cell therapy, he was talking about quantum physics, he was talking about everything. And it was so like widespread it. Then I read his books, and I listened to every single podcast. But then I went into osteopathy and orthomolecular therapy, and then I didn't really quite lost it, but it just went a little bit to the back seat. I had some problems with my brand, etc., and it just didn't feel quite right. And then I just knew it had to be something with biohacking, and then I changed the name from YouGrow4 to She Biohacks. So biohacking is actually maybe even the first thing I started with before I did all the osteopathy and orthomolecular therapy and the functional medicine, etc. So that's a little bit of my journey with biohacking.
Wow, really nice.
Yeah.
Did you know that biohacking with cold exposure, like ice baths and cold shower, can improve your hormonal health? It decreases cortisol levels, improves your mood, reduces inflammation, and it just overall enhances your body's stress response. I do it every day. I dry brush first, and then I take a warm bath, and then I do a cold shower. And I feel so good after that. And I feel I feel so calm afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
And just the stress just leaves my body. Do you do it as well? Cold exposure?
I do cold exposure. There's a difference between like ice baths or like cold showers. I think cold showers are like really safe to use every day. With ice baths, maybe if we just look at our hormones and how our hormones are working, I wouldn't really recommend it doing like a really ice bath in the week before your menstruation, because progesterone is like really sensitive for cortisol. And what you see, because I think a lot of people think, but I thought cold exposure is like decreasing cortisol, but now you say increased. With an ice bath, you have like a massive increase of cortisol within the moment. And then as a result of it, you see like a long duration of decrease of cortisol. It's mesmerizing. It's like really hard training where your cortisol is like ramped up, and then you feel like it just feels so good within your body to have had that training, and you feel more calm afterwards. And that can last for days. So cold exposure is like beautiful. I wouldn't really recommend it in the week before your menstruation, especially with PMS symptoms. I would really not recommend it, because progesterone is already low with these people most of the times. For now, I do a lot of cold showers. Now we've got a puppy. And now normally I have a cold shower every morning, but now the puppy wakes me up. Oh yeah, I'm awake, and then I go to the puppy, and it doesn't really like when I have a cold shower before I want to go walking with him. So for now, the last few weeks, I haven't had a cold shower.
Have you noticed a difference?
I really can feel a difference, especially with meditation. It just makes me feel more like prepared for the day. It gives me like a really calm feeling. And with the puppy, it's like it's all a little bit more chaotic. Yeah. And cold showers, I just love to do them actually all year round. It just wakes me up. It's just really it's really fun to start your day with cold exposure.
Yeah, I do cold showers pretty much every day, but not when I'm on my period.
Yeah,
when I'm menstruating, or when I'm sick. So when I have a cold, because my body just tells me don't do it. Not today. And but on every other day, even in the winter, I do it, and I feel so good. I feel awake.
You feel
but
awake.
also just calm. And how I start my day is I start my day with breath work while listening to my own affirmations, because I record my affirmations. And then once that's done, I dry brush my whole body, and I dry brush towards my lymph nodes, so that I just have a lymphatic flush and cleansing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel nice because it's scratchy, but the moment warm water hits when you take a shower, I just feel so great. And then closing off with a cold shower, it's the best. And what I've also noticed is that I've had less of a need to put body lotion on my body, because my skin already feels better.
Yeah.
And before I would always just be like, lathering on shea butter. And now sometimes I just don't even do it. So it feels really good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ritual. I think that it doesn't even really matter what you do within the morning ritual, but that you have a morning ritual. And I've been in a time where I really was so chaotic. What is the best morning ritual? Every time I did the one thing, I had to say no to the other thing, and it just messed up my mind. Now it's just, when you have a ritual and you can be consistent with that ritual, it's always perfect. We really do need a ritual in the morning and in the evening. We are already making our days so long. We are already pushing ourselves so hard. In this society, really needs to have like some ceremony, like some ritual in the morning and in the evening.
Also to reduce the stress levels, for instance.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nothing is within black and white. When you look at the winter, and the winter goes through into the spring, and the spring goes into the summer, and the summer goes into the winter, you see that there is a change. The whole nature is prepping, but it's not just like you're in the middle of the winter and then you are in the middle of the summer. But we are like organizing our days to be just like that. So we have all these, like, we have to work, we have to train, we have to be social, we have to do all these different things within the day. Then we are like watching TV, then we have like our smartphones, then we have to do this and that and so many things. And then we put away our smartphone, and then we go to bed and we think, oh, now it's night. So it's summer and then it's winter. We should really incorporate a ritual. So see the day as summer, and see like the evening ritual as autumn, and see the evening as the night as the winter, and then see like the morning as the spring. And these two compartments of the day can really help you soothe into the day and soothe into the night.
That's beautiful.
I have so many clients that I teach this, to just get a morning ritual and get an evening ritual. And I don't really have to do anything. I just have to say, go to bed a half hour before you want to go to bed. Do meditation, do like a breath work, do like maybe a hot shower, do something, but don't do anything like that's cognitive
challenging
or something.
I read a book
about that.
No, I mean,
I read a book. I read a book. I also read a book.
No, I actually in the morning when I wake up, the first thing is I read a book, and then before I go to bed, I read a book.
Yeah.
It's because it just really calms me down.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I also listen to audio.
Yeah.
I listen to Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Just as audio, just to calm me down.
Yeah.
But I noticed that not being on social media or on my laptop doing things, but just reading a book, learning something new.
Yeah.
Can really help, and I don't dream about it the whole night.
It's crazy because I a lot of people, they have crazy dreams, and they say, I'm so tired and these dreams are making me crazy. But I tell them as well, where in the day do you have like process time? Because we nowadays have so much stress and so much stimulation, information. It's much more than it was like 10 years ago, even more than it was 20 years ago. The timing of the world is going too fast. But when we don't have any process timing or time within the day, then we all have to process within this period of hopefully 8 hours of sleep. But we need more of the process time. We can't expect our bodies to work longer and like doing all these things through the day, and then just process it in a couple of hours of sleep.
Yeah.
It's not, when we look at our grandparents, they didn't do that. They had far less mental stimulation. They had far less like all the new stressors, like like the blue light, the artificial lights, like the toxins, etc. But nowadays we are constantly in a battle with all these stimulances.
You're saying like a really good biohack is make sure that you have a morning and an evening ritual to ease into the sleep and then to ease into the day.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful biohack.
Yeah, it's one of the most important biohacks.
Yeah. And so what are maybe some other biohacks that you do, that you practice?
Yeah.
As a woman in her fertile years?
Yeah, it's really important to have that morning and evening ritual, but it's also really important to make sure you have good sleep hygiene. So sleep is, I think, one of the most beautiful biohacks you can do, because sleep is the most powerful intervention to really recover and to integrate everything you did in the day. So you can biohack your way into training, you can biohack your way into focus and concentration, you can biohack your way into everything. But in the end, everything you do in the day has to be processed into the night. So if we can make the nights like of great quality, then we are like beautiful biohackers. Then we are like doing half the work. Just a couple of things where you can think about. It's not just the hours you put in. So I would definitely recommend that you sleep 8 hours minimum. And 8 hours of sleep is not 8 hours in your bed, because if I wear the Oura ring, I see that I lay in my bed for like 9 hours. I get like 7.5 hours of sleep. We want to be there somewhere. So, for example, if you think, oh, but I am like 7 hours in my bed, maybe you are even getting 5.5 hours sleep, maybe even 4 hours of quality sleep. That's not enough. You really want to sleep enough. So try to lay in your bed like 8+ hours. I see a lot of people who think they sleep like 8 hours, and they think, oh, but I sleep 8 hours. So I go to bed at 10 o'clock, then I wake up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And the day after I go to bed at 2 a.m. and then I wake up at 10 a.m.
Guilty.
The problem with this is that our circadian rhythm, our day and night rhythm, is so in line with nature's pulse, nature's rhythm, that when we are like shifting from the 1 hour to the another hour, you really have to think about it as constant jet lag. And the jet lag always influences your sleep quality. So, for example, we've got like the winter time and the summertime in the Netherlands. I don't think they have it everywhere, but within the Netherlands they have like summer and winter time. We are sleeping the same hours, but we are feeling that something isn't quite normal. And when we do this like in the week, or maybe the week in comparison to the weekend, you might sleep 8 hours, but the sleep quality again is less.
And what about biohacking your hormones?
Biohacking, yeah, sleep. No, but I think sleep is like the low-hanging fruit, because everyone can work on sleep. Even if some people aren't ready for diet, but they can work on sleep. And when we can work on sleep, we influence our diet choices. So sleep is really important, especially for hormonal health, because when we don't sleep enough, then we see that cortisol, prolactin is out of whack. When we don't sleep enough, we see that we are way more sensitive to insulin resistance. All these things are happening because of the lack of sleep. So we want to make sure that all systems are working effortlessly. I think it's really beautiful if you could really get to know your cycle. If you have a cycle and you're not using hormonal contraceptives. But even if you do use hormonal contraceptives, maybe you've got like the IUD, or you got like the pill or the Nuva ring or something, you can still like get to know yourself, get a journal. You can like journal about how do you feel? How does your skin look like? What is your energy level? Do I have acne or not?
So tracking your cycle, actually.
Even if you haven't got a cycle, it shouldn't be an excuse to track your health. Because if you track it, you will get more susceptible for things that are out of whack. And we in this society are like become masters in not paying attention. But if we are mindful, for example, in your morning ritual or in your evening ritual, you are like journaling or you're keeping like scores about your health, then you become more mindful about how your body feels. Then you become like, maybe people don't really think about they are having a headache until they are journaling. And then they think, I think I have a headache for like 3 times a week. Or I have a lot of clients who said, no bloating, no problems with my gut, etc. And then they come back and they tell me, yeah, you told me about this and this, but I do have problems with my gut. I do have problems with my menstruation, but they never paid attention. So the first thing within biohacking is you have to really investigate your current health. Otherwise, you can't progress anything.
Yeah, true.
Biohacking is a lot about measuring and about examining first. And because I can throw all these hacks at you, like buy an aura ring or do stem cell therapy or go to red light therapy or cryotherapy or whatever. But maybe there is nothing wrong with that system. Maybe we should check another system. The same with insulin resistance. If you tell me, okay, I have insulin resistance, and I say, oh, but it must be your diet, without investigating your diet, I'm putting you on a diet, but maybe it's your stress, maybe it's your lack of sleep.
Exactly.
We should always like navigate and examine these bodily sensations and the information that is coming from our body, so we can like get in really aligned action.
I can totally agree, because I've actually started tracking.
Yeah, beautiful.
Literally tracking. I have like a checklist for my morning ritual just to feel good about myself.
Yeah, wow.
And then I track my food, my emotion, my creative time as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, and also when I'm creative, just to see, okay, you know, maybe if it's consistent, then that's when I should start creating things.
Yeah.
But also, how much sleep did I get?
Yeah.
How do I feel? What is my mental, my body energy? What did I eat?
Yeah.
What did I drink?
Yes.
Which supplements did I take? So all these things, I've been tracking them. I just put it all in a table, and you would think it's like really, it takes so long to fill in. And I also add the events of the day, by the way, and sometimes extra notes.
Yeah.
And it literally just takes 5 minutes because it's just, you know, filling in. But I've noticed such a difference in that I know now what foods are, for instance, irritating me, or hey, this issue that I've been dealing with has been affecting my sleep or my creativity, or just so many. I've just seen so many relations because of it.
Yeah.
And I like it, because you take ownership of your health.
Yeah.
And that's why tracking your health and measuring it is so important. I totally agree.
Maybe we are conditioned a little bit like that, but we are sometimes blinded by the big things we can do. We are blinded by the big machinery who can fix all our problems. But biohacking is really about integrating the interventions that have the most effect on the most systems within the body. And you can't compensate for bad diet. You can't compensate for lack of sleep. You can go to like the sauna 3 times a week, but when you are like eating like shit and sleeping like shit, it's not going to do anything. So biohacking for me is also about simplicity, the big things first, the most simple things first, and then we go into like the details.
Just the low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
We have a question from the community for Dominique.
Hi, this is Emily. I've been having a lot of mood swings lately, and especially around my period, and it's really affecting my life and relationships. And I think my hormones might be causing this. I've heard that emotional health and hormones are connected, but I'm not sure how. Can you explain how they affect each other? Also, what can I do to keep both my emotions and hormones balanced? Any tips or simple changes I can make would be great. Thank you.
It's a big question. It's a whole podcast on itself. As she is already pointing out, she thinks that it might be caused by something within her hormones, and it has an effect on our emotional state. It might be vice versa, because we know that the emotional state can also have an impact on our hormones. Most of the time, when there is like a disbalance in our hormones, as we talked about that with the estrogen and the progesterone and cortisol, prolactin, oxytocin, all these different hormones, when there is disbalance and imbalance between these hormones, they can have a negative effect on your emotional state. For me now, it's a little bit more difficult to navigate from. I would really want longer anamnesis. She already felt that her hormones are in link with her emotional state, and I think that's really important to know that these two are in link with each other, that these two are in connection with each other, because hormones really have an impact on how we feel. And we already know it. We are in the first phase of our menstrual cycle, or we are in the second phase of our cycle. Under influence of estrogen, we feel different than under the influence of progesterone. So for her, it's really important to know what is causing her? When does she feel like her emotional state is out of whack, or when does she feel like she's not really the person she wants to be, etc.? Because that can decide which intervention you would integrate within your life. For example, a lot of women, when progesterone is already low, you see an exacerbation of PMS symptoms, but it doesn't really necessarily have to be that way. So I'm a really advocate for examining your hormones, because when we examine your hormones, then you can fit the right intervention with her specific needs. It's not that our hormones will always be out of whack when we test them, because hormones fluctuate. That is what we know. But also, it's not just always the hormones in itself that has been drawn by the blood, but it's in the function of these hormones within the cell. So sometimes hormones can be normal within the blood range, but that doesn't necessarily has to say that they are functioning properly. I don't really want to give advice because I don't know her specific situation, but I would examine that first. And I would really journal with which phase do I have the most problems or symptoms, knowing that estrogen is in the first phase, progesterone is in the second phase. We already talked about this. Maybe she can make some conclusions herself. And I would advise otherwise, if she has these problems, to talk to a specialist within the field.
Well, thank you so much for that as well. We've talked so much about different biohacking, making sure that you ease into sleep and that you wake up in a certain way that is good for your stress levels, from cold exposure to knowing more about your hormones and tracking your hormones and just your overall health.
Yeah.
Is there a product that you absolutely love, that you love to use every day, that you would say, I would recommend this?
I am a big fan of my Oura ring. So I am absolutely in love with my Oura ring. I have had it for 4 years now, and I just can't take it off. If I lose it, I lost it for 5 minutes. I'm already my cortisol is way up. But I bought it because I was overtraining myself a lot. I was one of those girls who was really shaming herself if she didn't go to the gym. I was always pushing it to the extreme, doing ice baths every day, training every day, doing long fasting periods of 24, 48, even 72 hours. But I was overdoing it, and my body just couldn't keep it together anymore. So I bought the Oura ring, and since then I made some decisions about how I wanted to organize my life and my health. And the Oura ring gives me a lot of information about especially recovery and sleep, because sleep and recovery was a main issue for me. And it helped me so much in getting to know my body more, getting to know my sleep cycle more, my chronotype, my sleep chronotype, my energy levels, my HRV, my temperature. I also use it for my cycle. It keeps my temperature, so I know when I'm ovulating. With that, I have it synced to the Natural Cycles app. So I also use it as a cycle tracker. And I think this is my favorite product I currently use.
Well, thank you so much. And how can women work with you?
Thank you so much for this conversation. I really loved it. And I absolutely love your work. And where people can find me is biohacks.com. But if they want to know more about my profession as an osteopath and orthomolecular therapist, they can navigate to Dominique de Ruijter.com. I will keep it in English. Just DominiqueDeRuijter.com. Maybe you can put it in the show notes. And I also have an own podcast, She Biohacks. You can just enter it within Spotify. And there I talk more about women-specific health topics, biohacking, and optimization.
I love today. I learned so much from Dominique about biohacking, your hormonal health. I hope you as well. And let's close off this beautiful episode with an affirmation. Repeat after me. I make choices that support my hormonal health and my overall well-being. I am in tune with my body's natural cycle and trust it to heal and balance itself. Till next time. If you enjoyed this video, it would be amazing if you could give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to learn even more, join our community. Connect, share, and learn by joining our online and offline events. Be part of our WhatsApp community where you can meet other women and ask your burning questions to our experts, and by subscribing to our weekly educational newsletter. The links are all below, so feel welcome to join our UMAVERSITY tribe.